Good overcast afternoon, class, and welcome to more of these videos where I tell you about my opinion and everyone hates me. I love it. Topic for the day: why I'm dressed like I'm about to go to a high-end business meeting and grossly hit on some women. Maybe I am. You don't know my life. What I wanted to talk about today is actually rom-coms. Movies which I frequently profess to fucking hate. I frequently talk about how much I hate rom-coms because I hate rom-coms. And yet there are a couple of rom-coms in my top 20 movies of all time. There's a list of rom-coms that I will watch and enjoy every time I watch them. I'm a huge fan of When Harry Met Sally, The Wedding Singer, 10 Things I Hate About You, Mrs. Winterbourne, Crazy Stupid Love, Ruby Sparks, Bridget Jones's Diary, and Colin Firth's in it, and I love Colin Firth. For all my talk about hating rom-coms and romance, Pride and Prejudice is my favourite book, and Pride and Prejudice, the BBC miniseries, not the Keira Knightley movie, is one of my favourite things to watch. To quote Avril from Movie Bitches, if I was stuck on a desert island and I could only bring one thing with me, it'd probably be that. Because it's just, there's no end of entertainment. And yet I still say things like, oh, new rom-coms are out. Oh god, that looks awful. God, why can't that genre just die? But I don't think I do hate rom-coms. I think I hate bad ones, of which there are so many. I think that's a huge problem for me when I'm watching, especially rom-coms. There are so many decisions made in rom-coms that are just, like, no rational human being would make those decisions. It's bananas. I sat down and I really thought about it. I really thought about what it is exactly about rom-coms that makes me say, oh, I hate that. I could go into my own personal psychology and say that it's because I'm from divorced parents who have divorced parents and I don't believe that love is real, but that's not true because I do believe in love. Maybe I don't believe in the one. I think that's important to recognise, is that just because there's not the one doesn't mean that you can't have 2 or 3 the ones throughout your life and be blissfully happy. We shouldn't focus on one relationship through the rest of our lives. We should just focus on the one you're in now and be happy in it. And that's it's a very unromantic way for me to be romantic. But that's essentially what I'm saying. I don't like rom-coms because they feel contrived. They have to scheme to make something into a solid story. And that's why I think I prefer romances in movies that aren't rom-coms. The romance bit isn't always the main plot, and then it feels more real because you don't have to hinge an entire story on will they get together. The Mummy, for example, because that movie is about a mummy. I'll just give the best synopsis. It's Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. Their love story is like a core part of how the story progresses, but it's not the main part. So they didn't write the whole story hinging on the fact that, well, they kissed one time. I've been really trying. They just integrated it into another story, which made it so much more believable. So when the second movie came around and they were married and their relationship had furthered, you went, oh yeah, I believe that, 100%, absolutely. Whereas when you watch a rom-com, if you come away from a rom-com going, oh, I don't want to see a sequel to that. If you don't want to see them as a couple after they're together, why are you watching the whole build up to them being together? I mean, I know I get the perspective that it's a chase and you're always more excited about the will they, won't they than the actual they did, because you're like, oh, they did. Oh, surprise, I'm done now. You can't envision them being happy or stressing out or the kinds of arguments they would have or exactly what conflicts would arise in their relationship and how they would go further. It's not a good movie. For the first time in my life, I'm going to admit something, because I always read the books first. I still haven't read the Bridget Jones book, so I will admit that. But that's why I love Bridget Jones's Diary, but I don't love the second Bridget Jones movie. The second movie ends with him proposing and her awkwardly screwing it up and then her asking him to do it again. It's a beautiful, lovely, romantic moment. What should have happened is that scene should have been essentially in the first 20 minutes of the movie, and then the rest of the movie should have been Bridget Jones disastrously planning her wedding. That would be the most hilarious, ridiculous, embarrassing, romantic, funny thing ever. I think they wasted that opportunity with the second movie. I think they did. I think they wasted it and it bums me out. That's not the movie that I have the most beef with. I have a lot of beef with How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Oh, I hate this movie. And I need to talk about why. Okay, here's the plot of How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Kate Hudson's character is called Andy Anderson. She lives in New York. She works for a women's magazine called Composure, and she writes for the how-to column, hence the title, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. So good. She sees her friend, played by Katherine Hahn, who is great, get broken up with again, so she decides she's going to perform an experiment called How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, at which point at the end she'll write an article about it where she gets with a guy and then basically tries to drive him away using only the classic mistakes women make in relationships. Across town, Matthew McConaughey's character, Benjamin Barry, he works for a ad firm and he wants to head the big diamond selling ad campaign. He's having discussions with his boss about it, and at one point he says something like, I can make any woman fall in love with me. And essentially his boss says, okay, if you can make a woman fall in love with you in 10 days, you can head the diamond ad campaign. So, obviously, because of the magic of rom-coms, these two people find each other rather than literally anyone else in the entire fucking city. So good. And they spend 10 days of their entire relationship where she is slowly falling in love with him, trying to do crazy things to make him break up with her. And he does equally crazy things on the opposite end of the spectrum, trying to make her fall in love with him while he's falling in love with her for all the crazy, stupid shit she's doing. Eventually, they'd fall in love, but then, oh no, shock, horror! They find out about each other's deep, dark secrets. That they were only doing it for their writing, and somehow they have this huge fight about it in the middle of a party. Like, they run out onto the street, there's some crying, it's a whole deal. And for some reason we're supposed to be on Kate Hudson's side, sorta. The way the movie positions you, you're watching Kate Hudson be upset, and you do feel bad for Matthew McConaughey, but they both were equally terrible to each other. She found out that he was trying to make her fall in love with him. He found out that she was deliberately doing batshit crazy things to make him break up with her. And then the end of the movie happens. She releases her article and he reads it, and he has this revelation of, oh no, I'm in love with Kate Hudson. She's moving, or she's on a taxi to the airport or some bullshit, and he gets on his motorbike and he fucking rides down that highway and he fucking finds her, and they're on a bridge. He pulls the cab over so he can talk to her. She gets out of the cab, blocking traffic, by the way, for everyone. Pulls her over to the side of the road, gets her out of the car, and basically goes, Andy, no, I love you. I need to tell you, I'm in love with you. And then Andy, like a very sensible adult, goes, you're right, I'm in love with you too. And then they make out a lot, and then the camera pans back over the bridge, and it's this whole, oh my god, they're so happy, it's a happy ending, it's a happy ending. No! This movie is bullshit. I'm going to refer to them by their actor names so that anyone who hasn't seen the movie and doesn't want to, and shouldn't, won't have to watch it, but will still know who I'm talking about. So Kate Hudson, and Matthew McConaughey. The problem with this movie is that Kate Hudson's character tries to drive away Matthew McConaughey by using specifically the classic mistakes women make. Here's the thing. She doesn't do the classic mistakes people make in relationships unless those women are fucking psychos. She does things like
immediately moving in with him, buying a dog, dumping her shit everywhere. There is a scene in the movie when he's supposed to be having guys' night, and obviously she has to ruin it because she's trying to get him to break up with her, and she comes over with a tissue in her hand and it's blow your nose because no one likes someone who spends their time sniffing. She's holding this tissue to his face while he blows his nose in front of all his face.
It's so weird and so gross and so uncomfortable, and I hate every second of it. This is not even 10 days in a relationship, because the whole premise is that they only have 10 days to do this. 10 days! Real women wait slightly longer than that before even responding to a text. And I'm not one to shy away from cringe. Hello, Bridget Jones's Diary. This is beyond. Because Bridget Jones's Diary was cringy because she does things that we would go, oh yeah, real people do these things. Everyone does things like that, even if that exact thing isn't super realistic. The problem with How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days is that everyone watching this movie is going, no, we don't do that because we're not insane. And it's the same with Matthew McConaughey's character. He's doing things that, men just don't do. He's buying her nice stuff. He's letting her do all this crazy shit without calling her out on it. He does all this nice stuff, and he buys her flowers, and he treats her like a princess. Then he takes her to Staten Island to meet his family, and that's when they really get to know each other, and that's when they actually start falling in love. Oh, I hate this movie. Here's the thing. He's sort of doing equally crazily other end of the spectrum stuff in order to keep the relationship stable and overlooking all of the fucking bananas stuff that she's doing. And the major problem I have with this movie, more than anything else in this entire movie, it's not real. It's completely contrived. When you watch a movie and you believe in a love story, you know what you're watching is good. Like, I know it doesn't happen to me very often. It has to make sense or it just feels like nonsense. It's the same as with any other kind of movie story. If you're watching a movie and there's a major plot hole or there's like a clearly contrived way of fixing a problem, you're sitting there watching it going, well, I can't suspend my disbelief now. Like, I'm done. This is stupid. It happens so often in rom-coms, it kills me on the inside. My major problem with this movie is that those two people fall in love. He runs after her in a fucking motorbike, drives her, flags her down on the highway, confesses his love to her, and she confesses her love to him, which she had already done in her article. But neither of those two people were being themselves for that entire 10-day relationship. First of all, he fell in love with her after 10 days, which isn't rare, I mean, it happens. But he fell in love with the fucking crazy woman within 10 days, which shows him to be a little bit damaged. Second of all, she was a crazy person, and the few brief moments of sanity that she showed to him did not negate the fact that all he saw was a crazy person with a few moments of sanity. We kind of buy into it briefly because we can see she's not a crazy person, because we see her when she's not with him, when she's with her friends and she's talking about her article. We know that she's not fucking mental. But he doesn't know that. He knows that she keeps doing horrifyingly weird things, moving way too fast in this 10-day relationship, and he doesn't see any of the rest of that stuff. He just sees her being weird, and then when they go to Staten Island, he sees her briefly being a kind of semi-sane person, and he goes, I'm in love with this woman. There's nothing about this movie that makes me go, yes, these two people deserve and need to be together. Their love will go forever. Like, if I watch the sequel to this movie, it's going to be 2 hours of those two getting to know each other. Oh, so you're not a really romantic person? You don't buy people flowers and whisk them off their feet and devote all your time to them? You mean you're a perfectly down-to-earth normal journalist who does normal things and writes articles about lots of womanly stuff, which I have repeatedly shown myself to be very uninterested in? Oh, we don't connect in any meaningful way except that we briefly had a very violent fling where I was crazy and you were trying to whisk me off my feet? What kind of movie is that? That's a divorce sequel. That's a whole movie of those two going, oh my god, this was a horrible mistake. There's that line from Speed.
I've heard relationships based on intense experiences never work.
Okay. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Essentially, these two have done the Speed thing, except at least with the Speed thing, those two knew who each other were. They were honest with each other about their characters. Like, it doesn't make sense in this movie. I hate this movie. I hate it so much. Don't get me wrong, I love Kate Hudson. I like Matthew McConaughey. I love Catherine Hahn and a lot of the other really cool people in this movie. This movie to me represents everything that's wrong with rom-coms, which is why The Big Sick was such a big thing for me, because it was the first rom-com where I was like, oh, this is believable and enjoyable and it's not crazy and contrived and oh, this is really great. And do you know why that is? Because Kamal based it on his actual life and his actual real life spouse. That's why it doesn't feel completely insane, because it actually happened. And I feel like we need to write things like that more. Like Pride and Prejudice doesn't work because it's two people from different classes who hate each other and then fall in love, which is why the 2005 Pride and Prejudice movie didn't work for me, because that's what they made the story into. No, it's two people who are really very similar in ideologies and character who dislike each other, A, because they're so similar, and B, because Darcy is completely repressed and she's very outspoken. And it takes an entire book, a long, complicated book, and a series of events and actions and people for them to overcome everything that happens. You're never at any point going, oh, none of this would happen. In movies like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, it's too much. And that's what I think happened to movies in the noughties. The 90s and the 80s, they were all sort of fun. They knew how to make a movie not just lighthearted, but also have a heart to it and have an emotion that you connect to. And I mean, The Holiday, I guess, kind of does that, and that's from 2006. But it doesn't do it anywhere near as well as those older movies did, like When Harry Met Sally and Say Anything. Princess Bride is one of the greatest movies ever made, fight me. They made sense. They had a soul. And I'm not just talking about How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. It's just the best example of how bad they've become. Look at things like 13 Going on 30. That movie could have been great. It's an interesting concept. It's like big with woman. I even like Jennifer, she's alright. If you want good perspectives on like rom-coms and movies in general. I'd watch Movie Bitches channel because they talk about that stuff a lot and they're great and they review movies and they're wonderful. I think we need to get back on track in terms of writing good romantic stories. They have to be charming and fun and interesting and be dramatic without being Nicholas Sparks movies. And I'm sorry, I really hate Nicholas Sparks movies. I'm sorry, I really, really hate Nicholas Sparks movies. I think watching The Notebook was the first time I'd ever watched a movie and actively said that I hated it. Before that point, every movie I'd seen, I'd been like, I'd either liked it or was fairly indifferent to it. I think The Notebook was the first movie I ever watched where I actively was like, holy shit, I hate this movie. And I don't have anything against people who like The Notebook. I think it's fine. You love that shit, you do it, that's fine. I love Rachel McAdams too, guys. So I just think we need to address the deficit in our rom-com and our romance movie industry because it's a huge deficit and we need to get better at fixing it and making better movies in better circumstances, better characters and storylines and connections. And that's all I have to say about that. Still don't have an outro, so fuck me, I guess.